Sims, let's go.
Hello, everyone. It's your girl, Miracle Sims, and you're watching the GSL Talk Show. Tonight, we're going to be chatting with Miss Elizabeth Makepeace. So stay tuned.
Yeah, it's a miracle, baby. Shot chill, Miracle Sims, let's go.
But I'm not the type of girl that goes.
Yeah, it's a miracle, baby. Shot
You wishing I would have a one night affair.
Welcome back to the GSL Talk Show. I am here with Miss Elizabeth Makepeace. How are you doing?
I'm doing really well. Thanks so much for having me here, Miracle.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much for coming. You look highly anticipated.
Yeah.
I know we don't have to get into all the trials and tribulations beforehand, but I mean, I'm glad that you are here and we're going to have this conversation. So, tell the people where you're from and a little bit about yourself.
So I'm from Australia. I'm living an hour and a half down south from Sydney, New South Wales. Most people sort of know Sydney. It's one of the main capitals.
Mm-hmm.
And a little bit about me. I've been a single mum for a long time, but my kids are now growing up, and my daughter has just turned 30, and she's married, and my son is 28. So they flew off and did their thing quite a few years ago. And I've been a healer, an energy healer, for 25 years. So that's been a big journey, very big journey for me. And met the love of my life on the beach 2.5 years ago in a very fairy tale romantic way. And as you can see, his last name is Makepeace. And the way God works is, in my life, I always have names and like cars, houses, like things sort of illuminate to me.
Mm.
And so my maiden name was Payne, Payne. And I've been a healer for 25 years, and who walks past but a Makepeace. And his real name, his last name is Makepeace. He didn't make it up. It was just like crazy, right? It's like,
Wow.
but I did say I want, when my partner comes along, I want it to smack me in the face so I don't miss it. So here it is.
Wow, what an amazing! I was definitely going to ask about the name, but that is even like
It's
you just
crazy.
said, more amazing than I even thought.
Well,
That's
that
really
sort of
cool,
stuff
though.
happens to me all the time. In fact, I had when I first started out on this spiritual journey, I had a lot of Christians in my life, and I had some crazy stuff going on, and like stuff that was like out of this world stuff, and so I had this moment where I'd supported a young boy on the other side of a suburb. We were living at a beach suburb, and he was on one side, and because I was new to what I was doing, it sort of hadn't turned out the way I expected, and he needed some help afterwards. And I had to work out how to do it from my house, because he thought I was a witch, right? He was like, I don't want you to come near me. I'm, like he was telling his mum, like, I don't want to near me, right?
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, I was able to fix it in my house, and I couldn't believe that I did it, because I was new to healing. I was new to all of the energy work. And I got off the phone when she told me exactly when I'd done it, like she knew exactly the moment. And I got off the phone and went, oh my gosh, I am a witch. Like, what's going on? It freaked me out. And anyway, that the next day I was living up in Far North Queensland in right at the very top of Australia. And I was going camping with some friends. And so I was in the Daintree rainforest, beautiful, amazing stars, like just perfect sky, thousands of stars. I was there by myself waiting for them to come and pick me up. And I called out to God. I was like, I don't want to go any further until I know what side I'm working for. I really need to know that I'm doing the right thing here and that I'm working for you. And I got 3 shooting stars. Yeah. And so that's why I kept on going, because I got that, this is all okay and it's part of my journey. And I've had things like that go like all the way through my life. It's been amazing.
I'm flabbergasted, as they say.
Yeah.
Am I using the right word here? No, I mean that is amazing. I mean, now I know people are probably gonna, believers and stuff like that, because we are kind of hesitant, when we hear about this, that, or the other. However, I do acknowledge that obviously the Bible has a lot of spiritual and miraculous things happening and whatnot. And I mean, my mother, she grew up. I grew up with her having dreams and things of that nature. And I think, I must have some of that as well, or just knowing certain stuff, whatever the case may be. And it can be strange sometimes. I know I kind of more so joke about it than anything. I'm like, oh, I'm not a prophet liar, but then I'll say something and then it'd be correlated to exactly what that person has going on. And then I'm like, okay, well, I'm not trying to proclaim to be anything, I'm just, I guess having conversations or whatever. But yeah.
When you think about it, why would God stop talking to us? Like, all of I'm just trying to remember the guy in the Bible that was in jail, and his whole thing was about dreaming, remember? And Joseph, and he dreamt about the, storing all of the wheat in Egypt, so for the famine. And so why would God stop talking to us? And it doesn't mean that we're anything special. Like, it just means that everyone has the opportunity to be, for God to speak directly, right?
Yeah. And I mean, even he said, to the disciples that you're going to do greater things than me and things of that nature. And so it just gets to be, I guess, because we hear more so about the other side versus hearing about God's side and things of that nature. I don't know if that could be the reason, or, of course, the enemy tries to hijack all things. So it's like, oh, and then their stuff gets spread out way more. And then it makes us feel weird, because it's like, then we're not tapping into our spiritual gifts and stuff because of all of those things. So, I mean, well, where should we go? Where should we
Yeah. It's true, right? And I will just, while you're, collecting all of that, I will just say that there is so much going on, so much spiritual warfare, right? There's so much with the enemy and the things that are going on in the world at the moment. It definitely feels like the end times, right?
It does.
And yet we tend to focus on those things. We tend to focus on the end times. We tend to focus on the fact that the enemy's, seems to be taking over and all of those things. But the way I work has elements of psychology or science in it as well. And the unconscious mind is holding on to patterns of behavior. So we're as soon as our umbilical cord's cut, all of a sudden we are now separate. We see ourselves as separate, right? We have to have influence outside of our body to survive, because no longer are we fed and nurtured and, have this beautiful womb to be in. And so all of a sudden we need something external. And so for the very first couple of years of our life, definitely 0 to 3, but, up to 7, our brain wave is in the same pattern as if we were being hypnotized, right? So that's why they say kids are like little sponges. And so we're learning all this stuff. We're learning how to move our mouth so we speak English and not Chinese or whatever your native language is.
Right.
You know, how to brush our teeth, how to walk, all of those things. But we're also learning how to behave in our environment. So one of the things that I say to my clients is, in a house full of thieves, it's the child that doesn't want to steal that is shunned. So here we are, we get into patterns of behavior just like the rest of the family. And so if our needs are not validated or met in some way, we then start moving into beliefs that we're not good enough, we're not worthy, we're insignificant, we don't belong, all of those things. And they now become locked into our neural pathways, just like how we brush our teeth or talk or walk or whatever. They're beliefs. But these are beliefs not of God. These are beliefs of the enemy, right? Because the enemy has separated us, or we, like separated us from our source. And so the unconscious has seeded from, the tree of life of good and evil. Sorry, the tree of knowledge of good and evil, right? Has seeded us internally. And we are then in this place where we feel separate, we feel like we're not enough. But it's actually our unconscious behavior from way back that's just in this pattern. So for us to move into the tree of life and the opportunity to be, with God and Jesus and all of these things is not focusing on those things from our childhood or those beliefs, catching them when they're there and going back into the remembering that we're not broken, that we are a child of God, that we are, have this ability to be more than, as you said, Jesus said, you will do great works than I, and even more. So remembering that and focusing on that instead of what that we're being conditioned to focus on the enemy. You put the TV on and it's all negative.
Yeah.
It's all about not focusing on it, switching the TV off, don't listen, don't be a part of it, and focus on what you choose to create instead. In alignment with your God, like in alignment with what is of our highest vibration, in alignment with love. We've got the choice, and that's the thing. We've got the choice, and we have to be the warriors of light,
That's good. I mean, look, honestly, we can go all the way around with this, this conversation. But I mean, I guess let's start at the beginning, right? Like, who tell us about Elizabeth Payne, and then how you got to be. I know how you got to be Miss Makepeace at this point, right? But but what got to be, I guess, this woman of God, healing situation? Like, I guess.
Is there, well,
Payne?
this is really beautiful. I love that. Like my listeners, my audience will be going, you're talking about God, and like this is not a part that we really know about you. And yet I have a real story when it comes to God. Yeah. So I grew up in a family. My dad was on a kidney machine. I was the last child after a stillborn. So I've got two brothers, and they're 6 and 7 years older than me. And Bradley was a stillborn. And in those days, my mum and dad were told, go and have another baby. There was no healing, like, grieving, all that sort of stuff. Mum didn't even get to see Bradley. And that was very chaotic in my family, apparently. I grew up under the shadow of Bradley, actually, because she lost this child. But my dad was on a kidney machine. He was sick. So before I was born, my parents were Christian. But by the time I came along, he was like, why would God do such a thing to me? And so he had shunned, out of his life. But my auntie was still Christian. And whenever she could get her hands on me, she would take me and, feed me with the information of God and Jesus and all the things. And I remember distinctly, I was about 7 years old, and I don't know what we were talking about, but I remember being in my auntie's lounge room. I might have even been drawing or something. I was doing something in the lounge room and she was in the kitchen and we were talking about Jesus. And I remember saying to her, so she'd said something to me and I said, so you're telling me that all I've got to do is call on Jesus. So if anything bad happens to me, I'm in a dark alley or someone's going to kill me or something, I just got to call on Jesus and he'll save me. And she said yes. And as a 7-year-old, that's all I needed. And I distinctly remember this flush of something I now understand. I would say that I had a spiritual baptism in that moment, because I felt this energy, like this wash of something, like a shiver in my body, because at 7 years old, the innocence of, okay, I can do that, it was enough for me, right? I also was aware that I knew that my dad was going to die. I grew up with him on the machine, and I used to lay next to him while he was on the machine and cry, I don't want you to die. And he'd say, I'm not going to die. But at 15, he passed away. So at 15, I went on a big bender for like 10 years, doing all sorts of crazy stuff with my partner. I left home. I now realize I was grieving. And at the end of those 10 years, and I could have been in some dangerous situations, but never was. I got into drugs and all sorts of crazy stuff, but very, very protected all the way through that. At the end of that, we had 2 children, and I realized I needed to grow up and do, look after these kids. And he wasn't prepared to. And so I separated and became a single mum. By that stage, he was an alcoholic. And, it was really tough. But as I was saying before, I've always had like Christians in my life. And so I had 10 years of being by myself and working out who I was. And I became a remedial massage therapist, discovered that I could feel energy and move energy around the body and all of those things. And I went and I moved up to far north Queensland. I went to this psychic, right? Now, someone came to me and she kept on hassling me to go, you got to go and see this woman. She's amazing. And I'm like, no, they're charlatans, there's no way I'm going to see this woman, and she said, oh, you get to see your dad or feel your dad, or whatever. And I ended up going to this woman just because, just to shut up my friend. She was annoying me. And so I go to this woman. She walks in and she goes, so what are you doing here? You can do what I do, but obviously you don't know it, right? And I'm like, here we go. She's trying to take my money. It was like, didn't believe in any of it. But she starts telling me all the stuff, and stuff that she wouldn't know and no one knew and all the things. And then my dad comes into the room and she's telling me stuff, and like he was there when I had a car accident and all these things. But I'm writing this stuff down as she's telling me, and I feel this thing across my cheek, like I felt this touch. And I looked up and she said, oh, did you feel that? And I said, yeah, what was that? And she said, that was your dad. He just wants you to know, listen to what I'm saying. It's important. So I then had the ghost thing, I put my hand out and all this, like I felt him on my hand. I went home, and for 2 or 3 days, there was just this energy, all like touching me, all sorts of crazy stuff. So I ring her up, what's going on? Like, this is freaking me out. And she said, they're all just happy you've woken up. It's okay. It'll settle down. So I said, can I come back? Wanted to book in. And she said, no. I'm like, huh? The charlatan doesn't want my money, but now I understand that she was true and genuine, and that she knew that I would lean on her. But through that process, I didn't know anyone that was having this sort of experience. So started, wandering. I went to a meditation circle, and through that started doing some training in spiritual energy work. But all the way through, like, if I'm going to keep this on the theme of God, right, all the way through wondering if I was doing the right thing. And so I remember distinctly that the first woman that I met in that suburb, her name was Margaret. She was a 60-year-old single pensioner. Her husband had died, and she was a Christian. Her dog bowled me over at the beach, and we became really good friends. And I used to take her shopping and, pick her up and take her places. And she became a surrogate grandma to my kids, because my mum lived in a different state. And she was in my life at the time. And so, teaching me stuff, and again, still learning from the Bible through other people. And I remember distinctly this moment. I was washing up in my house and thinking, what's going on? Like, I've got all this weird stuff going on. I've got my Auntie Elsie, I've got Margaret. Like, who am I listening to? And I just took my hands out of the water. I went and laid on the first bed that was available, and now I understand. I surrendered, right? I just went into this whole surrender. And Jesus came to me with a crown of thorns on his head. Now, for someone that didn't have any concepts, I wouldn't have put that on his head, because in my mind, the crown of thorns was a Catholic thing. When I grew up, my neighbors were Catholic. And so that's how I would have associated the crown of thorns. But yeah, he came to me and he said, why do you think they would treat you any different? And I had this moment where I'm like, oh my gosh, they put you on they tortured you and put you on a crucifix, right? And was this moment of being really humble, right? Like, who do you think you are that, that you're any different to anybody else, right? Like, it's okay. So it was just sort of this moment of, it's okay, just keep going. And I've had a couple of things like that, just going through, I could tell you I've had another two. The last one was the most amazing. But through the process, I went, wait a minute, I'm learning the Bible through other people. I've got a really strong connection with Jesus. I want to know more about him that's been written. And so I read the Bible. I found the closest Bible that has the most that's the purest. So it was a Bible that it was from Aramaic to English, not Aramaic to Greek to English. And so I read it from cover to cover twice. So I've read the Bible all the way through, not just taking bits. My first business mentor, I went to this event for 3 days, and the amount of information, like we were writing down book of all this information she was sharing. And at the end, she said, by the way, I've been teaching you out of the best success book ever written. And she was talking about the Bible. And so I went, man, I need to read that book with all that stuff in it. I need to read that book. And she said, you know, don't read it by just opening up a page, because the enemy knows the book as well as anybody else, in fact, better. So you want to read the Bible from the start all the way through and get the whole story. And so, through that process, I recognized myself as a Christian, and that I had this deep affiliation, and that there's amazing stuff from love and sex and money and wealth and relationships and health and quantum physics and law of attraction and all the things are in that book. And I had this process that I went through with the two trees of recognizing that before we had the opportunity to take from the tree of life, Adam and Eve, that the enemy, tainted us with the tree of knowledge of good and evil. And so it wasn't until Jesus came along and gave us the opportunity to breathe in the Holy Spirit that we then went into the tree of life. And so now we've got a choice, right?
That we do. That we definitely do. Another
a lot to take in.
Part of this, I mean, well, first, I definitely want to acknowledge about what you said about your dad and things like that. And thank you for your transparency in regards to that. And I mean, well, I too lost my dad early, but the unfortunate or the thing, I'll just say the thing, but the thing about that is, it was so interesting because I was talking to my son about this earlier a little bit, trying to help him understand. But long story short, he passed away before I was born. So, so that same year that I was born, he passed in May. I was born in August. So that's pretty much what happened with that situation. And so I was explaining to my son, I was like, he never got the chance to be, I guess, obviously the father or whatever. He's my dad and father, of course, but you know what I mean. So,
Yeah.
So anywho, so I mean, I guess I can't imagine what it's like to lose a parent that and like you had the time and things like that. So I'm sure it has some effect and things like that. So, do you think of him often? And like, how did you feel with those
not
interactions?
so much. Yeah, not so much now. But he, because he was on the kidney machine, my parents had reversed roles from the traditional way, and so my mum worked and was never at home. She owned her own business or several businesses, and my dad was a home dad, like he looked after me. And so mum was a little bit of a tyrant, to put it mildly. And and so dad and I were like comrades, we did everything together. He was my best friend. Him and I, just we looked after the whole family, because mum was working. My brothers were teenagers and, doing the teenage thing. So we cooked and cleaned and all of the stuff. And so it was a big thing. It was a big shock. As I said, I sort of knew, but I didn't know that I knew. Like, it wasn't. He passed away while I was at school, and they came into my room, into my class, and I just started packing up. Like, I knew that they had come for me. And when the teacher took me out the front, I said, "He's dead, isn't he?" Like, I just knew straight away.
Oh, wow.
So it was really quite a challenging process and experience. And I would say that's why I ended up in the relationship I did. I was looking for someone to nurture me, and the partner I ended up with was looking for someone to mother. So we were both dysfunctional. Excuse me. We were both in a dysfunctional space and young. So yeah, it was destined to not work well from the very start, but it did keep me in a sort of safe environment for 10 years. But I was grieving for that whole time.
Yeah, I'm sure. And so the situation, I guess the relationship with your mom, I guess what kind of impacted, because it seems like she wasn't there, so you went away, or, I don't want to assume though. So
That's
what was
exactly
that
what
like?
happened, because it was like
I'm sure she was
when
also
Dad,
grieving, but
yeah, well, and of course I didn't realize that at 16, right? I was like, well, I was 15 when he passed, but by the time I left, I was 16, because it was, I think he passed in July and I turned 16 in September. And so it was like, who's this woman? She's my mum. I don't think I like her. Like she, all of a sudden she was, trying to help me in her way was very different to mine, and all the things. And so it was very challenging, and I just took off. And she says to this day, Elizabeth was an absolute angel, because I used to do everything I was told, right? Elizabeth was an absolute angel until she turned 16, and then she made up for it in the next 3 years. She said she was worse than my brothers put together, but it was just me. Just I went loose, I rebelled, and yeah, I just numbed myself, and so did my partner. So it was a crazy time, but just to bring that to a conclusion, this is my understanding of Jesus. Excuse me. My understanding of Jesus is that Jesus came down to share unconditional love, non-judgment, compassion, and understanding. And if we can get that, forget everything else. Forget everything else. I remember having this moment when I first found out that part in the Bible where Jesus said, or someone says to Jesus. It's been a while since I've read the Bible. Someone says to Jesus, what's the most important of the 10 commandments? And Jesus said, well, to love God and only God. And now let's get that out of the way. The most important is for us to love our neighbor as we wish to be loved ourselves. And I had this insight, I had this vision of being in church on the pulpit, reading from the Bible, right? Reading that quote, and then looking up at the congregation, closing the Bible up and saying, now, let's go and do that one thing. Let's go and love our brother, our neighbor, as we wish to love ourselves. And then we can come back and talk about the rest, right? Let's just get that bit sorted out. So bringing that back to my mum, I, as a teenager, went through that whole thing of really struggling with the concept of that's my mum, and she was narcissistic and all of the things, very, very hard to deal with. But I healed that with her. I went through the struggles. We struggled together until, and I remember the moment when I was in her house, and I'd come back. Single mum, used to, come down and visit once a year. And I remember the moment when we were having some sort of argument, and I looked at her and I could see, I just looked into her eyes and I saw the little girl that was struggling, that had never been loved herself, really just wanted some love. And that just opened my heart up, and so I now live in Sydney because I lived in Far North Queensland for 16 years. But my mum got to a point where she needed help And so I moved back down to Sydney, which is like chalk and cheese to like rainforest to the suburbs of Sydney, right? And I moved back to mum's house and I looked after her until she's now in a nursing home. I go and visit her all the time, but, you know, I looked after her until she got to that point where she needed that support. You know, she needed more than what I could give her. And we've got a really good relationship now. So all that healing has gone, or, you know, all of that energy of problems between us, all of that's, you know, I recognize that it's not even about forgiveness. It's about clearing the stuff that's inside of us, that stuff that's from the enemy that needs to be addressed and cleaned up so that we can love as, you know, as Jesus did, right? And be as unconditional as possible in this human form, right? We're not perfect, but to do our best.
Oh yeah. I mean, so I guess now the question is, so how from that childhood experience and things of that nature, and forgive me if you said it before, because I'm feeling like, just in case you did say it before, but making sure we understand. So how did you, I guess, realize or tap into this healing side of yourself? Like, because, you know, I get you went through some things and then you working out your own relationship with God, you're having these experiences. And then, so what made you understand that, oh, you know what, this is a gift and I can do this, and that type of thing?
It was actually another experience with Jesus, to tell you the truth.
Let's go.
So at one stage, and you know, my thing is, everyone has the choice to believe whatever they believe, right? I believe, you know, in the Bible it said the very first thing is that I am the alpha and the alpha and the omega, right? Like I am everything. So God is absolutely everything. And so when we're judging something, we're judging from ourselves. We're judging ourselves. There's something, my understanding, the way I live my life is, if I've got a problem with you, then I've got a problem with me. There's something internally that I need to clean up and sort out, because if you are just being you, and, you know, let's face it, we're all imperfect, then there's something within me that I haven't rectified. So I read the Bible and became a Christian, and then actually got a bit tainted by a Christian man and a couple of Christians, and the church I was going to and all the things. And I pulled back and, you know, read the Bible again, understood all these things. But there was things that I just couldn't rectify inside myself personally. And as I said, I had this thing about the two trees, right? Which tree am I in? And so at the same time, I'm building my business, and, you know, this energy work that I'm doing is clearing. So what I do is a thing called recoding. And I believe that this is new energy that's coming to the planet because we are in the end times. But at the end of the end times is heaven on earth, right? Like, this is what we need to be focusing on, is this end result of, forget about the end times, focus on heaven on earth, which we've all got the opportunity to experience with choice, right? We can choose that. And so what recoding does is it clears, and I'm just going to use this language for this podcast, it clears the enemy out of our body. It clears those beliefs, emotions, memories, events that happened that were out of alignment with our pure spirit. And so, you know, you can imagine this, you know, all the information I've been reading and being humble in this. Where is my role? What am I doing here? You know, like, and of course, there's so many people that have got gifts, and we've all got a gift, right? So I'm not making myself any better or different to anybody else. We've all got the opportunity to tap into the gift that God's given us, right?
Mhm.
So I'm at a business event, another business event, different business event, and I just recently created a Facebook group called Women of Light. And it was part of the business thing that I was doing. And these two mentors, one of them had just come in, and so we were all started getting used to him because he was loud and a bit obnoxious and a bit like Tony Robbins, a bit rah-rah, and they were promoting this next level called the Abundance Circle. And they were talking about scaling up and all the things, right? And I'm good with it for a moment, but then I start going into this. I'm in the middle of this place, and I go into, I'm supposed to be humble, and, what am I doing here, and what am I supposed to be doing, and what's God's purpose, and blah, blah, blah. And I start doubting.
Mm.
And because my brain was going into this, when you're in the tree of knowledge of good and evil, there's all this stuff in your head, right? And as we all know, the enemy can pretend to be all sorts of crazy stuff, right? It's not just, so, who's really talking to me is where I was going. And so they start doing this meditation, and he's on the speaker, like loud and screaming. Apparently people were having trauma just by, how loud he was. And I had this moment, I'm like trying to work out what I should be doing. And so, there's 50 people in the room, the music's loud, and he's on the microphone taking us through this meditation visualization thing. And I have this memory, this thing in my head of remembering that in the Bible it says, if you call on Jesus Christ, no one else can come. If you call my name, only I will come, right? And I can't tell you where it is in the Bible, but it's in the Bible. And so I have this moment where I went, Jesus, Jesus Christ, I want you. I want to listen to you. I want to talk to you. I want to know who I'm talking to. And this beautiful energy just came just this peace again washed over me, and this voice just stay with me. And I just broke down into tears, and I'm on the ground bawling my eyes out, just in tears, in this emotional, like realizing that all the way through my life, and I'm going to cry again. Tears of joy, right? Because all the way through my life, all of the drug use, all of the, I did past life aggression stuff. Like all the stuff with the psychic, all of the stuff, all the way through, he has been with me. And I just knew, like when he was saying, stay with me. And I'm like, in that moment, I realized no person, no Bible, nothing outside of myself could tell me whether I was with Jesus or not. I knew that I was with Jesus. It was just this conviction within inside of me that what I was doing, where I was going, who I was, all of the things, that him and I were together, and that this was a relationship that I had personally with him. And so I come out of that like this moment of, just recognition, and it's okay. And I come out of that, when you go through some sort of healing, there's this crescendo, and then it comes back, and you sort of come back into yourself. And, I start noticing that I'm laying on the floor in the middle of this room, and there's 50 other people, and there's noise and all the things. And, I sort of come back into the room, And as I stand up, so I just told you that, I'd done a Facebook group called Women of Light. As I stand up, the music that was playing, the chorus starts, and the song started. The song went, light up, as if you have a choice. Even if you cannot hear my voice, I'm right there by your side. And I just started laughing, right? Like, it was just like, of course, it was just one of those moments, right, where I just knew. And yeah, I haven't looked back. It's okay. I know what I'm doing is the right thing for me, Jesus, God, my belief. What other people want to believe is up to them, but I know where I'm at and what I'm doing. And I've had other moments with Jesus as well, so I know my vision and my his vision for what I'm doing. So shouldn't sorry about that. You're muted.
Now, see, no, I was saying, no, thank you for the transparency and everything. And no, I totally, I've been there, in regards to those moments. As a matter of fact, I believe even in church yesterday, like God was just speaking and telling me exactly what I needed to hear and things of that nature. And I mean, I can't lie, I've had experiences where songs, and I'm like, actually, very recently, I know this is gonna sound weird, but I was I was listening to a friend of mine's album or whatever, and one of the songs, and I felt like in my heart, I felt like God was singing it to me, and I'm like, Lord, how do you have so much love for all of us? Like, because right now you're making it for me feel like it's all about me, but you know what I mean? I know you got everybody.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's one of those amazing things. I guess we'll never understand till we're in His presence and things of that nature. But I get it, man. So what is it that He has you doing? Like you said, you understand the path now. You understand, I guess the work He has you to do and things of that nature. So what? I mean, I guess aside from the group and the healing work, so tell us about like the things that God has you doing right now.
Sharing the message, really. Sharing the message that we're not broken,
Yeah.
that we just think we are.
Mm-hmm.
Sharing the message of where are we focusing? Are we focusing on that broken side, that part the enemy wants to, I read a book once. It's an interesting book because, sometimes reading what not to do is just as important as reading what to do. And it's an old book called Outwitting the Devil. And in that book, it talks about drifting, and that this is one of the things that the enemy does to us or gets us to do is drift. And I'm like, oh, I love that language, because look at us, like constantly, what's the first thing most people do when they wake up? As soon as you go on this phone and you're looking at social media, you're looking at your emails, you're looking at your text messages, you're in other people's energy. You're being influenced external to yourself. And all of a sudden, you're not in your own space. You're not connected to your own God. You're not connected to your own spirit. And so being in that space, how can you then listen when you've all of a sudden been, now you're, especially first thing in the morning, we've got that, half awake, half asleep sort of feel to us. And so in that process, we're very susceptible to information. So if we're externalizing that information and allowing or being influenced external to us, we're now separate again. We're now, thinking and being those conditioning from our childhood, all of the things, is becoming that 95% of our brain capacity and our mind. And we're setting ourselves up to be distracted for the day, to drift. If you spend an hour in the morning in your own space, in connecting to God, praying, meditating, whatever your thing is, maybe even reading the Bible, soaking up information that is of God, of the light, then you're connecting personally to your higher self, your wisdom, your connection, and then you're more likely to have a better day. You're more likely to be intuitive, to get inspiration, to hear the little voice that God is, that whisper, and do the same at the end of the day, right? To spend that time in your own space, spend that time in your own energy, so that you can defrag from the day, from all of the influence that happens to all of us, and have that quiet time. So then you can listen again, so that you can go into your dream state in that space, instead of, watching movies and all the stimuli that we get from this external energy. And we all know that it's all the enemy, right? Like it's distraction.
Yeah.
So to really be focused on what we want to create, I know I want heaven on earth. Right, so I want to experience that now. So I have those moments. I remember when I was with my mum, and it was really hard. I'd moved back down and I had no idea what I was doing, and she really needed help. And I'd moved from the rainforest of this beautiful location into the suburbs of Sydney, and I was really doing it tough. And I'd gone shopping for us, and I was at the shopping centre. I was just at the checkout getting my food, and I looked up, and this strong, powerful woman walked past with her groceries, and we just smiled at each other. And I knew who she was, and she knew who I was. It was just this moment between two strong women. And they're those moments where heaven's on earth, right? It's those moments of connection with beautiful, pure souls. Never spoke to her, don't know who she is. She doesn't know that I talk about her on a regular basis. It's those moments that we can hold on to that really light us up inside. We know when something feels good and when something doesn't feel good. Like, we know when we're feeling depressed and anxious and separate and insignificant and all of those things. And we know when it feels like we're connected. And so it's us that has the opportunity to make that choice. So choose to have that hour to yourself in the morning and night. Choose to connect in to that higher self, your God's, that wisdom. And know that when you're there, then the rest of the day where you might be influenced and, there's opportunity for the enemy to come in, is going to be a lot lighter because you've already plugged in from the start.
Man, I guess usually around this time it'd be time to wrap things up. But at the same time, I guess I would love for you, if there's any other things that you feel led to share with us, feel free. Also let the people know how they can, find you and your endeavors and things of that nature. And yeah, let me just, by all means.
So on Facebook, I tend to I've got a website. So my middle name is Elenor, which is spelled a little bit differently. So it's Elenor. So it's Elizabeth with a Z, Elenor.com. And you can find me on Facebook. I'm on all socials, but Facebook is the one that I sort of hang out in if it's me. My team do other things. So yeah, reach out. I've got lead magnets or whatever you call them, free resources if anyone wants to check those out as well, and just jump on and have a call.
Well, I mean, you're definitely welcome to come back anytime, Miss Elizabeth. Thank you so much for visiting us.
Would be lovely. It was a great conversation. Thanks so much, Miracle.
Wishing I would have a one-night affair.
Thank you so much for watching the GSL Talk Show, and thank you to Miss Elizabeth for joining us tonight. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share, and check out Miss Elizabeth and her endeavors. Have a good night.